You know Graybar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Graybar does that.
As nearly impossible to believe as it is, we are at minor league all-star game time already in the 2017 baseball season. And that, I don't know how on earth that happened, but hey, welcome in everybody. The 115th episode of the Show Before the Show podcast from MILB.com. It's good to have you along with us. I'm Tyler Mon. Sam Dykstra is in New York City. We are recording this today on Tuesday the 20th, and we've got all-star games going on in the minor league. How did this happen? The season started 5 minutes ago.
Well, the way that happened, Tyler, is the world's the planet. It spins on its axis. It goes around the sun. Every year, middle of June comes up on us.
That's what Kyrie Irving tells me.
Yeah, and that's and while we're on that subject of just moving around the sun and things happening as they do once a year, the reason why we're recording this on Tuesday is Wednesday is your birthday.
Oh no, we didn't have to put that out there. It is. That's
we
true.
did though. Which
apparently today is actually the summer solstice, but to me it's always the 21st. It's always the first day of summer. So I'm not celebrating the first day of summer until tomorrow. Sorry everyone. Just didn't happen that way.
There's first day of summer and then there's first day of summer observed.
Right. Yeah, that works. Sure, we'll go with that. Yeah, no, it's always a good time of year, but this is bizarre because we got short season. The draft is in the bag. We're already past that. We've got short season leagues starting this week and at the end of last week, and now we've got minor league all-star games, and we're past the midway point really for full season leagues almost. We've got half of June, all of July, all of August, and then a couple days in September. And that's it. And then playoffs.
Yeah, that's it.
Man, oh man.
I mean, it's a very busy time. Like that makes it sound like, oh yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. Man, season's basically over.
Season's over. Yeah. No, it's like once those short season leagues hit, things really pick up on our end. And, in exciting ways. We get to see a lot of guys we haven't seen yet this spring, see how they've been doing since the spring. We get to see a lot of these draft picks in their first, pro environment, see how they can handle that. For the college guys, how they move to wood bats. For the high school guys, just what they're going to do on a daily basis, things of that nature. So, it feels like a lot of the season has already gone by, but there's so much still to happen that it's kind of exciting to see how much baseball we're going to add here in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, this is going to be a bunch of fun, and I'm sure if you added up all the times that I was like, oh boy, I can't believe how fast time is going on this podcast, it would have been a ton of times, but it still feels like this has been a very, very fast start to the season. And as of yet, we don't have the full group of leagues into the pool. We're still waiting on some opening days in short season ball, but everybody gets started this week, and that's just nuts to me. Short season ball is really that's when you know you're in the heat of the baseball season. When all the short season leagues get rolling and you start getting guys out of the college, the NCAA tournament and out of the College World Series, those guys start to sign, those guys start to play, then it's full on pushing toward postseason, all that kind of stuff. But we've already crowned some division champions in the first half in full season leagues, and we'll be talking about where some top prospects are going to be headed. We just got news about one of those that we'll be discussing here in a little bit, and one of those big pivotal times a year here as we near the last week and a half of the month of June, the season's second full month across the minor league ranks, and episode number 115 of the Show Before the Show podcast from MILB.com. He's Sam Dykstra. I'm Tyler Mon. You can find us now on Google Play for those of you who at one time tuned in on Zunes and no longer do. We heard from our good buddy Matthew, who had a Zune and listened to us with regularity on the Zune, and the Zune finally died, which made us so upset. But with Matthew's input, we got the show put onto Google Play, so you can now find us there. If you are an Android user, you can also find us on the Stitcher app or on iTunes Podcast, and everywhere you find us, give us a rating and a review and a subscription, and that kicks us off into strike number 1 of 3 strikes for this week's edition of the show. And we're going to get things started with some bummer news out of the New York Yankees organization, where the Yankees will be without their top prospect, Gleyber Torres, who is done for the season and more with Tommy John surgery, a necessity in his left elbow. There's a lot of stuff that stands out about this story, but one thing in that conversation that will start the point about this is that note right there. It's in his left elbow, so keep that in mind. This is the lead from Sam's story. An ascendant season for Gleyber Torres has come to an abrupt halt. The Yankees' top prospect will undergo Tommy John surgery after being diagnosed with a torn ulnar collateral ligament in his left elbow, the organization announced Monday. There's no set date for the procedure yet, but he will miss the rest of the 2017 season. A tweet from the Yankees PR department on Monday said, quote, "Earlier today, infielder Gleyber Torres was seen by Yankees head team physician Dr. Christopher Ahmad at New York Presbyterian Hospital and diagnosed with a torn ulnar collateral ligament in his left elbow. Torres will undergo Tommy John surgery at a date to be determined. He is expected to be recovered in time for 2018 spring training." Left elbow. This is not a throwing injury. Gleyber Torres, there was some confusion about this on social media. Gleyber Torres was injured on a slide at the plate. This just seemed like kind of a 1 in a million type of deal, where Torres had his left arm as he was reaching out on kind of a hook slide to tap home plate, trying to score a run the other day for AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre on the road at Buffalo. Reached out, was tagged, and kind of had that arm pinned under him, immediately rolled over, was in pain, but it's not his throwing arm. It wasn't a throwing injury. This isn't the same type of thing that we see with pitchers, that we see every once in a while with infielders, with position players. This is a different situation, and that, on the one hand, breaks your heart, because a guy who's going through a breakout season, who's one of the most exciting prospects in baseball, we're not going to get to see him for a long time, and that's awful. On the other hand, it's a little bit of a better case scenario, because since it's not in the throwing elbow, the recovery time is going to be a lot shorter, and Torres should be 100% ready to go in 2018, Sam.
Yeah, that's one thing I thought that tweet from the Yankees PR staff was very interesting in pointing out. It didn't say he will miss the remainder of the 2017 season, right. I don't think. It said he will be back for 2018 spring training, which is just classic PR stuff, regardless of the throwing arm issues and all that
positivity.
Kind of stuff. Right, yeah. You focus on when he is going to be back, not the time missed. But yeah, no, this is completely unfortunate. Like I said in that lead of a story, this was supposed to be an ascendant year. This was a year that he had started in Double-A in the Eastern League as the youngest player in the Eastern League at 20 years old, and then did incredibly well there at an 863 OPS. And the questions started to get a little louder. Okay, so if he's doing well now, if he's hitting the ground running here, what is that going to mean? Well, the Yankees got aggressive. They pushed him up to AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre after only 32 games in Trenton. After 23 games here in Scranton Wilkes-Barre, putting up similar numbers. He was hitting 309, again an 863 OPS, same OPS that he had in Double-A. Still one of the youngest players, if not the youngest player in the International League. They were moving him around the infield. They were trying to get him regular time at third base, maybe to potentially take over for a struggling Chase Headley in the Bronx. Things were just lining up so well. The Yankees are doing really well this year. They're leading the American League East. They're going to need all the help they can get in that second half if they want to hold off the Red Sox and the surging Blue Jays and in a pretty talented division. So, it seemed like this was going to be a year that we were going to see Gleyber Torres in the Bronx, showing off his young talent at the highest level in the game. And it just gets cut so short and just so abruptly in this way. This isn't anything that was building. It's not like he had taken a couple weeks off and they just finally decided, okay, now's the time to get the surgery. This wasn't like a normal pitching issue. Like Braxton Garrett, it was announced today that he's undergoing Tommy John surgery in the Marlin system, but that was after getting multiple opinions and all this kind of stuff. With Torres, it was literally guy went in slide, reached out his left hand, got banged on the left elbow, just happened to be the UCL, the ulnar collateral ligament, the one we always talk about with Tommy John surgery. It's a ligament. It can get torn. It can get ripped. Anything can happen with it. The same as your hamstring, the same as, any muscle you have. It's not necessarily that it was a throwing issue. It was literally just a slide. And it's really unfortunate. Tommy John is such a buzzword in the game right now. To hear it with any player, position, or or pitcher, it sounds scary. But because it's his left elbow, not his right, he doesn't need to throw it. He doesn't need to use it that much, other than in these situations for running and a little bit in fielding and using that's his glove arm. But he doesn't need to go through a rehab process and get used to throwing again. And that usual 12 to 16 months we talk about with pitchers, that's not going to be the case with him. So to go back to that Yankees PR statement, with them saying we expect him to be healthy by 2018 spring training, that's great. That's a great optimistic note to hear. What that's going to be after that rehab process, is he going to go right back to Scranton Wilkes-Barre to start the year? Are they going to kind of ease him in, make sure he's fully healthy again? Who knows? It's going to have to play itself out. Every body is different. And I'd say that every space body is different. So we don't know exactly how he's going to heal from it until he does so. How is it going to affect his hitting? Because that's still, hitting is kind of an all-body act. So that's going to take some time as well. He's going to be taking a half a year off, so he's got to face live pitching again. All these things are going to kind of come into question. So it kind of puts his major league debut off by a year. We're no longer talking about second half of 2017. We might not be talking about him making his debut until the second half of 2018. But, if there's one thing Torres has shown since he's come to the Yankees, it's do not doubt him. He was the MVP of the AFL last year, was on track to be an Eastern League All-Star this year, despite being the youngest player, on track to be one of the best hitters in the IL, despite being one of the youngest players. So I would not doubt that he can still force his way to the Bronx next year. But this certainly delays that. And to see that happen with such a young player, and one was filled with such talent, the number 2 overall prospect in the game right now. Some people think he's even better than Yohan Moncada, given the fact that he could stay at shortstop if they really needed him to. And plus, his overall hit tool is one of the best in the game, if not the best, for young prospects. Just so much promise there, and to see it, thrown up against a red light like this is disappointing. But it is a freak accident. Nobody to blame. Nothing to do about it except for just wait and see how Torres comes back.
One of the things I thought was interesting about this, Yankees general manager Brian Cashman and quote to MLB.com said, quote, he was obviously developing really well. We're going to lose 3 months of development time plus winter ball. It's disappointing, but injuries are part of the game. Thankfully, at this stage, it's still a correctable one. It's not super often that you hear a major league GM in June confirm that a player was likely destined for winter ball. A lot of teams like to keep that stuff pretty close to the vest, but the Yankees seem to have had that as part of the developmental plan for Gleyber Torres, which suggests to me, and this is just speculation, but suggests to me that if they weren't planning on having him in the lineup by the end of 2017, certainly 2018, it looked like an opening day job was a legitimate possibility for Gleyber Torres, even if he had struggled toward the end of 2017 in the minor leagues, because you send a guy to AAA at that age, you get him into winter ball, you get him as much high-level rep as possible. That suggests that this is a guy that you really want in the major league lineup and contributing as quickly as is feasible. Not as quickly as possible, but as quickly as you believe you can get him there and get him to be productive. So like Sam said, this sets it back a little ways. Big bummer for the Yankees, big bummer for Gleyber Torres. But one other note that was also in this Yankee story from Brian Hogg. He said, quote, in case Torres or the Yankees need any encouragement, they can look to the Astros. Then a 19-year-old shortstop prospect, Carlos Correa, suffered a serious injury, a broken right fibula 3 years ago this week. That was when he was Class A Advanced Lancaster, which ended his 2014 season. He has obviously roared back to enjoy a superb beginning to his major league career. There was a lot of talk toward the end of that 2014 season that Correa might have been able to return for the postseason. The Astros held off on that, and obviously Carlos Correa has turned into one of the best players in the game. So the fact that this is not in his throwing arm, and the fact that it is an injury that we know there is a pretty set timetable for return. Like Sam said, everybody's going to react differently, and everybody's body and everybody's recovery timetable is going to be a little bit different. But the fact that it's not a throwing arm and there is an established protocol for how to rehab and get back to 100% from Tommy John surgery is one thing I would be interested to know, and this is a topic for a different day, but I would be very interested to know what the rehab process is like for Tommy John surgery on an elbow that is not your throwing elbow, because so often that's all the discussion. Yeah, I was doing the hand in the bucket thing. I'm squeezing rice. Then I'm figuring out how to throw a ball again. Then I'm throwing from 10 feet. Then I'm throwing from 30 feet. Then I'm going 60 feet. Then it's long toss, whatever. If it's on your glove hand, what are you doing? You're just fielding grounders? I don't know how that works. It'd be kind of interesting to know.
I'm sure
though.
it still involves the hand and the
rice. The rice
sure.
thing I'm sure is still going on. There's probably a lot of like hydrotherapy or something, but the timetable you would think would be a little bit more expedited because you aren't going to have to test it in a throwing manner. But that was important to clarify because there were a lot of people that were like, oh man, and now we're seeing Tommy John surgery for infield prospects, blah blah blah. No, not the case. It's an unfortunate thing because of the slide, because of the tag, and because of the way the Torres landed. But that's sports, man. I mean, that happens, and it's a bummer that we're not going to get to see Gleyber Torres for the rest of the year, but of course we wish him all the best in his recovery from Tommy John surgery on his left elbow. Strike two, Sam. Short season leagues are getting rolling all across not only the country, but in Latin America. The Dominican Summer League has been going on for a few weeks now, but the Pioneer League, the Northwest League, the New York Penn League, the Appalachian League, the Arizona League, the Gulf Coast League, all of those circuits are set or started already for 2017. Who are you keeping an eye on in the short season leagues?
Yeah, there's one combo that's very interesting to me. It's going to be at Mahoning Valley. They've already got a game under their belt. It's that number 6 prospect in the Indian system, Nolan Jones, will also be paired up with number 7 prospect in that Indian system, Will Benson. Benson, for those who are long-term listeners, might remember he was our guest on the show last year. I got to speak to him from the media luncheon. He was a really athletic player, had been part of Team USA. Had traveled to the World Cup in Japan, done all these things. He was a commit to Duke, and there was talk about maybe him playing both baseball and basketball. Very athletic, obviously, in order to play both of those sports, but he's also very tall. He's 6'5", 225 pounds. Lots of power behind that, good speed, especially for that frame and a good arm. Would he be able to hit? The Indians have actually held him back. He was coming out of high school. So he was not going to do a full season this year. I think they wanted to see more out of that hit tool. They wanted to see him make more contact. He was a guy who struck out a bunch last year in the AZL, during his small taste of pro ball initially. He struck out 60 times in 158 at bats. That's pretty on the high side. It resulted in only a 209 average, but he still hit 6 homers in 44 games. So you got the whole taste. I don't think they saw exactly what they wanted to in spring this year to push him to Class A Lake County, so they held him back. They also had that same strategy, though, with Nolan Jones, who they got in the second round last year in the 55th overall pick. He's a third baseman, again, with a pretty good arm, a much better hit tool. MLB.com gave him a 55 on the 20 to 80 scale. They had to take him out of a Virginia commit with a $2.25 million bonus. So it took a lot of negotiation for that, a lot of talking into, him becoming a pro. So now, these were 2 exciting picks for an Indian system last year that, looked like it was going through one of its best seasons ever. Obviously, we know how that turned out with them making the World Series. They have not gotten aggressive with these 2 guys. Now, what does that mean about them? Like I said, with Benson, it probably means they thought he needed more time in an extended spring training and wasn't ready for Class A ball. Does it also mean they're just not ready to be aggressive with these guys? Are they know the investments they made with them, multi-million-dollar signing bonuses? Are they not pushing them too hard? Maybe there's a decent chance both of them could end the season in Lake County if they do well enough now. But the Indians being what they are right now, a contending team in the AL Central, with a lot of good pieces in the upper minors, Francisco Mejia at AA, Bobby Bradley at that same level, Tristan McKenzie at Class A Advanced. Their major league roster is pretty set right now. They don't need these high school guys or guys coming out of high school to rush to the majors. There's plenty going on. There's not that much pressure on them. Let them come into their own, get the success where they can find them. Now, what's going to happen with Benson and Jones? Are they going to be able to take this opportunity and run with it, or are we going to see that they still have a lot of room to grow? I mean, for Benson, it's only one game, and I'm not pouring his entire stock into it, but he did strike out 3 times in his first 4 at bats. in that Scrappers opener this week. So, lots of questions still with these guys. How well are they going to hit? How well is their game going to translate to a non-complex level? But the fact that they are both together tells me a lot about the Indian strategy with them and also who they are as prospects. And I'm very much looking forward to where they can grow and how they will grow in the months ahead.
Yeah, I think that's good. I like the pair that you picked for the Rookie Level Pioneer League, which is a duo out of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim organization. I can't ever leave the of Anaheim out. But a pair of former two-sport athletes, Brandon Marsh, who was a second-round pick of the Angels in 2016, and a name that people may be familiar of, Torrey Hunter Jr., of course, the All-Star Torrey Hunter's son, 5-time All-Star, as Sam points out in the story. Those two will take the field together as outfielders for the rookie-level Orem Owls in the Pioneer League. It's a league that's very conducive to offense. Two very young guys. Torrey Hunter Jr. is just 22 years old. He just had his 22nd birthday 2 weeks ago. Brandon Marsh just turned 18. Or no, check that, just turned 19 in December. And two guys who, when you cut your teeth in the Pioneer League, that's a rough league to get started in because the travel is tough in that league. There's a lot of really long road trips in that league, a lot of very offensively friendly environments. So it's you kind of get thrown into the fire really quickly in the Pioneer League. But it seems like we've seen pairs like this come out of that circuit in recent years, guys who have jumped in and have sort of made, you kind of think, I always think of that team, the Isan Diaz's team in Missoula when he was still a member of the Arizona Diamondbacks organization, and Diaz has since moved on to the Milwaukee Brewers system. But there were a lot of young, talented guys on that roster who you see then start to make the climb together. And the Pioneer League, for whatever reason, it seems like guys who start there stick together a long time throughout their careers. When you start in the GCL, you start in the Arizona League, even the Appy League to an extent, guys move on much more different timetables because they're a little bit lower volume, a little bit lower level in terms of classification in rookie ball. But in the Pioneer League, guys like Torrey Hunter and Brandon Marsh, you really get a chance to see what they're able to do against some of the better talent at that level. It's not the ultimate barometer to judge just how good a player's future returns are going to be, but you get that first inclination of, okay, what is this guy's track going to look like? Does he just blow through this league, and does that mean that he's going to be on a faster road to Class A advance, that type of thing, to get his career started through his first couple of seasons? Or is he somebody who's going to need, especially for the guys coming out of high school, somebody who's going to need a little bit more refining in the lower levels of the minor leagues? But those two are really excited. Torrey Hunter and Brandon Marshall will start things with the Orem Owls in the Pioneer League. That league is really fun, and they have a bunch of guys in that league who you always are wary of somebody who's just going to be able to blow up offensively, because every year it seems like in the Pioneer League we see somebody who's going to hit 375 over the course of a year. But if you do it well there, then you've got a chance to make that jump before the end of the year and maybe contribute in the Midwest League or the South Atlantic League or wherever before the end of the season, because it is such a jumping off point at that low level. Yeah,
and one thing I just want to throw out there before it gets too confusing for anybody listening. There was a Pioneer League preview that was written by, this is a great name, wasn't me, but it was Fritz Neighbor on this Orem outfield.
Solid name.
It's a fantastic name, and I wish my byline was that cool. But yeah, read more about that Orem outfield in Fritz Neighbor's Pioneer League preview. That Pioneer League, it always sneaks up on me as a hitters league. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it is a short season.
East Coast
we
bias.
Don't follow it for the same amount of time as like a California league or a PCL or anything like that.
Right.
But DJ Peters last year led that league with a 1.052 OPS for Ogden. He hit 13 homers in 66 games. He's now a legit prospect in that Los Angeles Dodgers system hitting.
And in high A.
Yeah, at high A. He made the jump right away. He was coming out of a junior college, I think, in Western Nevada. But still, they saw enough out of him at that Pioneer League to give him that push in his first full season. So, that Pioneer League, it can get a little funky. You can see for sure some crooked numbers. I think last year the league hitting champ was Mabris Valoria, who get this 376 in 58 games, which is a little nuts, but I guess if Brendan Rodgers can hit 400 in the Cal League, we shouldn't really blink twice about somebody hitting in the 370s in the Pioneer League. But yeah, always keep that kind of grain of salt with them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to hit at the upper levels. So it's a good test. If you're not going to be able to hit in the Pioneer League, you're probably not going to be able to hit somewhere else. So look out for those video game numbers. Look at them a little harder than you normally would, but don't be surprised, if they carry that forward.
As Fritz Neighbor also pointed out in that story, the last alumnus of the Pioneer League to win National League Rookie of the Year honors was Corey Seager last year with the Dodgers, who played in the Pioneer League just 4 years earlier in Ogden in 2012. And prior to that, it was Will Myers on the AL side. He's the last American leaguer to win Rookie of the Year who played in the Pioneer League. He played for Idaho Falls in 2013. So just 4 years of separation for each of those guys from debuting in the Pioneer League to winning Rookie of the Year in the major leagues. So it shows you how that can be kind of a springboard to get things started on a professional baseball career. Strike 3 this week, Sam. Nearing the midway point for most full season leagues. We've seen some guys who've gone out and struggled. Who is a pick on your side to watch in the second half to get a season turned around and back on track?
Yeah, this is more just struggles in terms of the way we traditionally look at stats. And I think we've done a pretty good job both on the site and on this podcast of kind of, always keeping things in check, not getting too caught up in certainly wins and losses for pitchers or ERA or batting average, knowing that things can go a little deeper. But if you're going to look at just that traditional stat of ERA, Yadier Alvarez, who's one of the top prospects in the Dodger system, it's not been a great start to the year for him at Class A Advanced Rancho Cucamonga. He's posted a 5.32 ERA in 11 appearances. That's 45 and 2/3 innings. But the reason why I think that's going to get much better, not that the Cal League is going to turn into a pitcher's league overnight, but his FIP, his fielding independent pitching, is 3.82, which is a significant drop. That's a drop of a run and a half, essentially, if you're thinking about them in the same scale. And he's still striking out batters. He's averaged 9.3 strikeouts per 9 innings. He's striking out 23.4% of batters. So all the peripheral stuff is there for him to really, it just, the numbers need to catch up with his performance. He's got one of the best fastballs you're going to see out of him in the minors, which is really interesting to watch it coming out of him. He's 6'3", listed at 175 pounds. He does not look like a Noah Syndergaard or something like that, somebody built to have velocity. He's a little bit of a toothpick, but has tons of velocity to go around. Really impressive breaking stuff with his slider and his curve, and his changeup can be an above average pitch as well. So he's got all those packages of pitches to kind of to dominate even at this Class A advanced level in the California League. And I expect him to kind of turn that around, get him, back into the swing of things as he's starting to add innings, as he's starting to figure out hitters, getting into the rhythm of it. I would not be surprised if that ERA catches up to that FIP. And, I don't think anybody's losing, or I don't think Alvarez is, lost his reputation or anybody is losing faith in him, anything like that. I think people generally know what he's kind of up against in that Cal League. And sometimes teams that, or organizations that have teams in the Cal League don't want to keep their pitchers there for too long. I remember a couple of years ago, the Mariners had Taijuan Walker just completely skip over the Cal League and go straight to Double-A Jackson. And he struggled for a while, but they would rather have him take his lumps at the Double-A level where he's not going to give up these cheap homers. And the Dodgers aren't taking that track. But, I think Alvarez is going to kind of find himself. The fact that he's limiting contact, that he's still getting these strikeout numbers, he's still really difficult to touch, makes him as an intriguing prospect now as he was on opening day. So if you're a Dodgers fan, you're getting kind of worried. Yadier Alvarez isn't the dominant Pedro Martinez type stuff type of results that we were expecting. Don't worry, know what the league is, and expect that he, even despite the league, he will pitch beyond it. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes Tulsa by the end of the year, just to give him a taste before starting there in 2018. So, that Yadier Alvarez, he's my pick for probably a stronger second half than we saw in the first.
One guy who we have almost kind of forgotten about this year because he's been so quiet, and somebody we talked about a ton over the last 2 seasons is Tyler O'Neill in the Seattle Mariners organization. And so far this year, O'Neill has really struggled in his first taste of AAA with the Tacoma Rainiers, but that's a guy who I just don't see struggling for too much longer. So far this year in 67 games, he's batted .216 with a .662 OPS, only 6 home runs, and we know just how much Tyler O'Neill hits for power. We haven't seen that out of him this year, but one thing to keep in mind, last year he kind of followed a different track through that outstanding season with AA Jackson. In the first half, he batted .321 with a .936 OPS. That was in 68 games. Tailed off in the second half to a .261 average, but the OPS dropped to .822. The power was still there. It wasn't reaching at quite the same rate, but that was a bit of a tail off. But 2 years ago, when we really started learning and thinking and talking about Tyler O'Neill, was with Class A Advanced Bakersfield and the California League, and during that season, struggled in the first half, a .240 average in 57 games. He hit 14 homers and he OPS .754. Second half, 49 games. Average went up 46 points to .286. The OPS jumped over 1,000. It was at .1020. He had 18 homers in the second half and drove in 48 in 49 games. I think his game is one that adjusts well, but sometimes it takes a little while. We've both talked to Tyler O'Neill. We kind of have gotten the feel for him as being a pretty cerebral guy in the way he approaches the game. At AAA, that's going to take even longer than what it would take at AA or the Class A advanced level. He struck out a lot so far to start this season. 77 strikeouts already for Tyler O'Neill at the start of this year in 67 games. Compare that with 27 walks. So the issue in making contact has been there, but I think that's a swing and a profile that can adapt. He's in the least hitter-friendly environment in the Pacific Coast League in Tacoma, so that doesn't help you out as a hitter. But I just see his hitting approach has always been so mature. And granted, Tyler O'Neill is still 21 years old. He's still well below the age of the level at AAA. But I feel like if we're going to see a bounce back from somebody in that vein, that power prospect who struggled, he's a guy that I like in the second half.
Yeah, and just to kind of bring up what you were talking about in terms of his strikeout numbers, that's actually pretty equal. Last year, he struck out 26.1% of the time at AA Jackson and still put up those monster numbers, 293 average, the OPS that you mentioned, all that kind of stuff, the 24 homers. This year, he's striking out 27.6%. Yeah, that's up like a point and a half, but it's still not into the 30s.
Right.
It's not like he's swinging and missing more than he ever has. The fact that he's kind of kept that stable despite the move up is a little encouraging for me, to be honest with you, just because I thought, AAA pitchers were going to figure him out even more so, and it was going to be a lot more of this, a lot more swing and miss, a lot of more swinging for the fences, that kind of stuff. If there's another reason to be encouraged by O'Neill last year, and I'm going to get this wrong, and people pointed this out to me before, I say BABIP. A lot of people out there say BABIP.
I say BABIP.
It's
a made-up word either way.
With the people. How about that?
Batting average on balls in play is what for those of you who haven't heard it before or have heard it one way and didn't know that there was another pronunciation either way.
Right. So his BABIP last year at AA Jackson was 364, which is pretty high, but for somebody who makes lots of hard contact, there's some reasoning to think that that's pretty solid. This year it's dropped to 284. So that's going to explain
below average.
Why
you kind of expect about 300-ish.
Right. Normally it's around 300. So even if we do think that 364 is high, this is even still particularly low.
Getting unlucky.
Just looking back at his numbers, he has not had a BABIP lower than 303 at a full season level. So there might be some luck involved here. I certainly expect the average to climb. I expect the OBP to get at least over 310 in this second half. And that power, you watch him take batting practice, you watch him in any kind of scenario, the power is real. So I think he's going to tap into that as well. Everything else is kind of average. It just seems like his luck is a little bit down. But that's something that can certainly turn around in the second half.
So If you're not a fan of a short season team and you really just want some storylines to follow in the second half and full season ball, there you go. There's a couple to keep an eye on for the 2017 remainder at the upper levels of the minor leagues. And that's strike number 3 for this week. But we do have a couple of foul balls. It's the second time that we are going to name drop Matt Marshall, who got in touch to let us know that his Zune had died, but also had a couple of questions for us that were draft related. So we're going to go with 2 foul balls for this week's show. Sam, number 1 and these are draft related questions. Of course, the Major League Baseball first-year player draft wrapping up last week. We talked a lot about the draft. These are follow-ups to that. For players who are picked outside of the top 10 rounds in the draft, is there a cap on a bonus that can be offered to those players, guys drafted in rounds 11 through 40?
Yes. Short answer is yes. So we talked before about there being signing bonus pools. Everybody has a certain amount of money. Each pick has an assigned value, an assigned slot value. Total that all up for all your picks. That's your bonus pool. You can kind of move things around, sign guys for overslot, underslot. As long as you fit under the pool, you're fine. But any pick after the 10th round, so like Tyler said, 11 through 40, they can be signed for up to a signing bonus of $100,000. You could sign literally every pick you have from 11 to 40 at $100,000 if you wanted to. No penalty, it's fine. But anything over $100,000, the difference is what comes out of the signing bonus pool. So you could conceivably do that. You sign your first 10 round picks. You still have some money to play with. Sure, maybe try to sign a high school guy in the 12th round for $175,000 if it makes sense. Like, you can still do that and there'd be no penalty. You just have to know that it's coming out of that bonus pool. So we actually saw this come into play last year. A friend of the podcast, TJ Friedel, he was technically an undrafted free agent after nobody realized he was draft eligible coming out of Nevada. He signed with the Reds for $732,500. That counted because he was not technically drafted. That still, counts as it's over $100,000. So there was, the 632,500 counted towards the Reds bonus, and then there were some penalties over that. It ended up that his signing costed about like $1.18 million, I think. But still, the Reds were able to make that work because they did have some room in their bonus pool. So that is why he signed with the Reds after all these other teams had all their money accounted for. The Reds had a little bit of flexibility, and they were able to go and get him above that $100,000 mark. But also, I think that's what Tim Tebow signed for. Do you remember that, Tyler?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, Tim Tebow signed for $100,000, and that was basically, again, because undrafted player, that was the max he could sign for, and that's what the Mets got him for.
So that's foul ball number 1. Number 2, for any picks that are coming out of high school, can a team set aside money for that player to attend college at a later date? And if so, does that count against the cap for top 10 round players? We've actually had this discussion with players on the podcast before and in stories before, guys who did work in a plan to go back to school after their pro careers were over. But Sam, take this one.
Yeah, so basically it's called the College Scholarship Program. Yes, they can, teams normally will try to negotiate that in. They say, we will pay, 4 years of school for you if you decide to go pro now. So a lot of these guys, they'll say, well, I really value my education. And that's kind of a talking point for MLB clubs. They'll just say, hey, we'll get you your education and you can start pro ball. We'll take care of all of that for you. And it does not count towards the team's bonus pool. That's one thing to know. Teams do not have to do this. It's a negotiating tactic that they can have, but just because you draft a high school player and you start negotiating a signing bonus does not mean you are automatically locked into paying for that kid's college fund. So it's just kind of a negotiating tactic. Does not count towards the pool. It doesn't mean if you sign a guy for $1.5 million and you say we'll give you $200,000 for college, all of a sudden it's a $1.7 million signing bonus, towards your pool. It's completely separate. That actually changed a little bit in this CBA. Baseball America did a story on this. I think it was Hudson Belinsky. He just noted that there is now a 2-year redemption window for the player to take advantage of this scholarship after his career ends. So if he retires and the team said, we set aside this money for you for your college, they can do it 2 years after they retire. The other one is that they can redeem, their participation in the college scholarship program at most accredited institutions, including vocational schools. I'm reading directly from the Baseball America story now, but not at for-profit universities with graduation rates below 50%. So that just, that's more technical side for the players themselves on where they can redeem it and when they can redeem it. But just so everybody knows, if you hear that, a high school player has also negotiated participation in the college scholarship program, it's not a part of that signing bonus.
So there you have it. There's always a million questions when it comes to the draft and all of that money stuff because it is exceedingly confusing. But if you have questions about that type of thing or anything else, get in touch. podcast@milb.com. We'll do our best to answer your questions, your thoughts, your comments, your concerns, and try to explain them in at least somewhat understandable terms because it still makes us scratch our head a lot of the time. One thing that Sam noted that we should also probably mention with a little bit more detail before we wrap up this first segment of the show. The Miami Marlins will once again lose a first-round pick to Tommy John surgery just a year after right-hander Tyler Kolek underwent that procedure. Left-hander Braxton Garrett will also undergo Tommy John surgery. Actually, he was scheduled to undergo today, June 20th. He was the 7th overall pick last year and was scheduled to undergo that procedure today in Pensacola, Florida, with Dr. James Andrews performing Tommy John surgery. Garrett didn't pitch at all last year and only made 4 starts this year with Class A. Greensboro, went on the disabled list and is now done for the year and will head into 2018 rehabbing from Tommy John. So that is a bummer, but we're obviously discussing the Gleyber Torres news, but another top 100 prospect in Braxton Garrett, who will be on the shelf for a little while trying to get himself back righted. And, a bigger situation for a pitcher, obviously, and the rehab process is so different for somebody like that versus what it's going to be for Gleyber Torres. So one other note that we wanted to make sure we got in there before wrapping things up in 3 strikes. So we're going to head to the West Coast, to the California League. Our own Josh Jackson has been on site for California League All-Star Game festivities this week. He was at Fan Fest on Monday night and at the All-Star Game on Tuesday. Josh Jackson got a chance to catch up with Brendan Rodgers, the Colorado Rockies top prospect, who has crushed his way through the Cal League. There is a report today that the Rockies will promote him to Double-A Hartford following the All-Star Game in the California League. This has kind of been the theory on Brendan Rodgers for a while. He's been hitting over 400 in the Cal League basically all year, but really consistently for the last 3 weeks or so. He's been bumping it up to 405, 410. Hasn't really fallen under 400 for any considerable amount of time. Looks as if after the All-Star Game is over in the California League this week, he will join Double-A Hartford. So we'll hear from Brendan Rodgers in one of his final interviews from Class A Advance. We'll also hear from an interesting and unique story in the Cal League. 25th round selection of the Arizona Diamondbacks organization in 2013, Bud Jeter, who's a right-handed pitcher in the D-back system, a reliever who is making his 2nd consecutive Cal League All-Star Game appearance. 52 outings last year in relief for Class A Advanced Visalia, 9-3 record and a 3.08 ERA. This year, 26 relief appearances already in the first half, 2.28 ERA. Josh will tell us a little bit about Bud Jeter's story. All that stuff coming up from Visalia and the Cal League All-Star Game next.
It's been a pretty fantastic beginning of the year for you. How do you kind of assess what's been going on for you so far? It's just kind of been so ridiculous as far as the numbers are concerned. But
I just keep playing hard. I mean, we were trying to win a first half, obviously, and we ended up getting that done. So I just wanted to. The numbers really. I try not to think about them too much because that when you start thinking too much, that's when they go down. So I try to let that go, and then I just tried to help the team win, and ended up winning the first half and having a good time with the team, and turned out good.
And you obviously you expect a lot from yourself, and you have a high bar to sort of judge your own performance. But have you been at all surprised at how well things have worked out?
Honestly, yeah, a little bit. I mean, 400's pretty tough to do. I mean, but I definitely had a fair share of bloopers that fell. But I mean, you need those for the lineouts that they make up for the lineouts and the balls at the wall that are caught and stuff like that. But I mean, I just went out there and got my thing done and just went out there and played hard every day.
Yeah, and this is your second All-Star game and two full pro seasons. You like the precedent that's set?
Yeah, it's setting the level high. Just gotta hopefully keep that going, keep that streak going.
Have there been any challenges that you've faced that we're not going to be able to see just looking at the numbers?
I've had a few rough games. I've had a golden sombrero. I've had 2 hat tricks. So it's not every day that I come out and always get 3, 4 hits, but it's definitely my goal. But you're always gonna struggle. Baseball is a game of failure, so you're gonna fail 3 out of 10 times, or 7 out of 10 times. Sorry, but just gotta keep playing hard.
No, nothing kind of like surprising, or just like the in and out days of sometimes you have a bad day mostly. I guess the last thing is you mentioned your team. Obviously, you guys, do you feel like this is a special team? I know some of them you played with last year in Nashville, but the numbers that everybody in that lineup is putting up are pretty special, and the pitching's been pretty good too.
Absolutely. We come out and Lancaster's obviously a hitter-friendly park, and our pitchers that are here have done a great job, and everybody else. But we try to just put up as many runs as we can, because you never know at that park. We lost a few games on some pop flies that are routine pop flies in any other park, and there ended up home runs at our park. So it's always, if we're up 5-6 runs in the 5th inning, it's not over. We still got to be aggressive on the bases and still got to keep hitting the ball and grinding out at bats.
One of the fundamental concepts of the minor leagues is, if you do well as a player, you'll move up the ladder, either during the season or for the next one. Bearing that in mind, not many guys end up playing in an all-star game at the same level 2 years in a row. Bud Jeter, though, has done just that. After representing the Rawhide in last year's California-Carolina League All-Star Game in Lake Elsinore, he was named to the North Division squad for this year's Cal League All-Star Game in front of a home crowd in Visalia. He recognizes his situation is a rare one, but
I don't think too much of it. The Diamondbacks have it planned for all of us, and I believe in that. And they got their best interest in me and for them and everything like that. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's a great honor to be selected again. I'm proud of that. So it is what it is.
The 2013 late round pick actually reached the Cal League for the first time in 2015, getting into 48 games. Last year, he began to look like a bona fide closer, earning 14 saves in 18 chances. But this year, he's already earned 16 saves, and he's posted a 2.28 ERA while notching 36 strikeouts over 27 and 2/3 innings.
I've been working with the pitching coach, Jeff Bajanero, and, we were together last year. So we've just critiqued a few things, we really work on it in spring training together, and then that's just kind of carried over to here in the season so far, which is just, mixing it up, working in some changeups, which, I was more of a fastball slider guy. Now I'm working in changeups a little bit, elevating fastballs, burying sliders and everything, and that's the game plan's worked really well.
It's also embedded him in the closer's role.
I do enjoy closing. Now if it might, as I move up, is that my job? I'm not sure.
In the meantime, Jeter is happy to be in the All-Star game in front of the home crowd.
I like Visalia a lot. I've spent 3 seasons here now, so it's kind of like my home on the West Coast, I'd say, and I like it. We have great fans here. The community's always behind us and everything, so it'll be fun. Lake Elsinore was a blast. They did a great job, but I'm excited to see what Visalia has.
Josh Jackson, you can find on Twitter and follow all of the best and brightest from the Cal League All-Star festivities. You'll have to look back through his feed in order to find it once you're listening to this podcast. But at Josh Jackson, MILB on Twitter. Brendan Rodgers is at BRO and then 97 Ds. You can just search for Brendan Rodgers on Twitter. Not the European Football Manager. Because when Brendan Rodgers was fired from Liverpool, a whole bunch of people were tweeting at Brendan Rodgers, the shortstop, and he finally had to tweet, "I'm not the Liverpool manager," a couple of years ago. So don't get him confused. Where is he now? Celtic FC? Something like that?
Celtic, sir.
Oh, is it actually Celtic?
Yes,
I'm not
Celtic.
a soccer fan.
Celtic is one of my favorite teams, but that's a different story.
Oh.
That we can say for our soccer podcast.
Oh, okay.
don't release onto the internet.
Men with no blazers.
Yes, exactly.
I wouldn't know how to talk about it. I feel so out of place having momentary soccer conversation. But anyway, Brendan Rodgers is not a European football manager. And Bud Jeter as well. Big thanks to him and Brendan Rodgers for joining the show. Sam, let's talk about something else. Brendan Rodgers in the California League got his career started in the Pioneer League, which we discussed earlier. Benjamin Hill would ordinarily join us this segment. Ben is actually journeying to the Pioneer League right now. It is basically the last circuit that he has yet to. It's kind of the final frontier for Ben. It's like outer space for Ben, but he's going to hit up the Pioneer League coming up this week and into next. So no Ben this week. But we are going to dive a little bit further into a topic that we broached a little bit in the first segment. Brendan Rodgers has been crushing the baseball all season long for Class A Advanced Lancaster. Got his season started a little bit late with, I believe it was a wrist injury that he had coming out of spring training this year. The Rockies are notoriously very tight-lipped about injuries, but Brendan Rodgers got back into action on April 24th, and since then, he has been basically a 400 hitter for the last 2 weeks straight. At the All-Star break, his slash line is 400, 419, 700. That's an 1119 OPS for a guy who's only walked 6 times all year. But the conversation has really been, for about the last 3 weeks or so, why is he still in the Cal League? And a theory that a lot of us, I think, had posited for the last few weeks is he's an obvious shoo-in for the All-Star game. That's a very cool honor for a minor league prospect. The Rockies are probably going to let him have that moment in the sun, and then he's going to be shipped off to Hartford, and he'll get a chance to try himself in Double-A. That is the latest report. Baseball America's Hudson Belinsky was the first one on that today. So that's what it looks like the plan is for Brendan Rodgers. We've seen organizations not go that way. AJ Puck was a name we talked about last week as being one of the really few names to watch in terms of top 100 prospects on the North Division side in the California League. The Oakland Athletics decided we don't need him to stick around for an All-Star game, might not even pitch in it anyway. He's off to Midland. So different discussion a little bit with a pitcher and a position player, but how do you fall on this debate? When is the proper time in a situation like this to get a guy up to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, it's so complicated depending on so many different factors. And, you know, a lot of that nuance is kind of lost, I think, in this social media age. Maybe not necessarily, I shouldn't blame it entirely on social media. I think that's just the microphone we all use to discuss, you know, especially as fans, you know, who should be getting promoted quicker. But it's just kind of weird how that's changed. In terms of, you know, so-and-so does well, it's immediately call this person up. Well, it's a little bit more nuanced for that. So let's take Rodgers versus Puck, right? So Puck was striking out everybody in the Cal League. It was very clear that he needed a new test. You know, yeah, there were some control issues. The evaluation is different for a pitcher than it is a position player. You know, he needed to show consistency, and you can only do that so often when you're pitching every 5 or 6 days, so it can take a little bit longer for a pitcher.
Especially in a situation like Stockton had, where they had at the beginning of the season what I think was deemed an 8-man rotation, where starters they would start one outing and then they would piggyback in a relief role the next time out. So you didn't even get a chance to see those guys necessarily the way that you want to see them progress as starters until May. So it was even a shorter timetable to determine that for AJ Puck. Yeah,
for sure. And but the other thing about AJ Puck, the reason why he's probably getting pushed, you know, a week earlier than Rodgers is he always seemed like a guy who was set up to move quickly. You know, college arm, there was lots of talk last year about him being the number 1 overall pick to the Phillies. Obviously, things didn't work out that way. He fell to the A's in the first round. But he was a college guy. He's well built, you know, 6'7", 220 pounds. He's durable. He's got the stuff. He can do all these things to move quick, as opposed to somebody like Brendan Rodgers, who's coming out of high school. And what is the conversation normally about high school guys? It's that, you know, you want to see them get a full season. You just want to see them find that success, get into the routine of pro ball. You know, Rodgers was able to do that last year at Class A Asheville, but he only played 110 games. You know, that's still a good amount, especially for a guy in his first full season, but it's not, you know, 140. There's still some hurdles he needs to clear. Like you said, he started out this year on the DL, or, you know, very early was on the DL, missed a good chunk of April. So he's still got to clear that no matter what he's doing with the baseball, no matter how hard he's hitting it. And then there's also the fact that he's playing in Lancaster. I bring this up every time. With him, he was hitting .495 at home in this first half in 23 games at home compared to a .308 average on the road. That would be very good. Let's get it straight. His .308 average, .835 OPS, very good. Exactly what I would expect out of Brendan Rodgers if he were making the jump. Now, he was able to take advantage of Lancaster in a way few others ever have. 8 homers, 14 doubles. He had as many extra base hits as he had games played at the hangar in Lancaster. So the Rockies, they always have to take that into account with these guys. Yes, they're tearing the cover off the ball. Yes, they might need a challenge. But with somebody like him, still being 20 years old, you don't want to throw him into the fire of the Eastern League. And not that the Eastern League is entirely a fire, but it's still a step up. Going from Class A advanced to Double A is a big step. He's going to be facing guys with major league experience potentially for the first time outside of rehab outings. It's a whole new world out there in Hartford. You want him there with as much confidence as possible. And maybe that plays into what you were talking about earlier, Tyler, in terms of getting that all-star game experience, seeing it rewarded with something off the field like it would be, with this trip to the Cal League all-star game. So whenever I'm thinking now, I had a very interesting conversation. This is a completely different organization, but with the farm director of the Cardinals this spring. Their philosophy is that they try to bring up guys when they are going to be below league average. They want them to be below league average, take their lumps, make adjustments.
Interesting.
Become above league average, and then get the bump. They don't want them to show up and just hit right away. So I think that's more what the A's are looking for. AJ Puck had ironed out some of his control issues, was really starting to dominate. Immediately, they moved him quick. I don't think the Rockies are quite that same way. I think back to Ryan McMahon, who's having a heck of a season this year. I just wrote him up this week as the PCL Player of the Week. He is hitting .444 for Albuquerque, but he played at Hartford last year. He was kind of following the same steps as Rodgers. He did Grand Junction for a full year, and he was there for the entire 2013 season. He did Asheville for an entire season in 2014, Modesto for an entire season in 2015, then was in Hartford for all of last year, really struggled there, hit just .242 with a .724 OPS, not exactly the numbers he had put up elsewhere. They sent him back to Hartford. So I think the Rockies kind of have this idea that you really need to prove to us that you are ready for that next level. Now, what did Ryan McMahon do in the first half this year? Hit .326, .390, .536 for a .926 OPS in 49 games at Hartford. Told me this week he worked really hard in spring to kind of change his approach at the plate, tried to make his swing less loopy. It's obviously worked out. So they want you learning lessons where you are. They don't want they want you to learn lessons and see results first. And they want you to really see them. And obviously they thought Rodgers has done that. But that's going to be different in every organization.
The Rockies sort of have a philosophy. You're talking about the Cardinals' philosophy. The Rockies' buzzwords or buzz phrase is always, he'll let us know when he's ready. He'll tell us when he's ready to be promoted. Not in an actual sense of Brendan Rodgers calling the Rockies player development staff and saying, okay, I'm ready to go to Hartford, but in the fact that the consistency is still there. With a kid who's coming out of high school, and I think that's important, as Sam noted, Brendan Rodgers won't turn 21 until August 9th of this year. There is always the possibility that, in April he hit .320 OPS, 773 in 6 games. May, he really blew up, .409 average and 1182 OPS in 27 games. There's always a possibility with a 20-year-old kid that in June the bottom's going to drop out and he's going to hit 115. He's going to strike out in 40% of his plate appearances because long season baseball is very difficult. And for somebody like Brendan Rodgers, this is his second full season. Spent last year with Class A Asheville and was good. Wasn't 400 good, but was good wire to wire. Still dealt with ups and downs. And I think from the Rockies' perspective, they wanted to hang on long enough with somebody like Brendan Rodgers to make sure May wasn't a mirage. And when he got into June, he was even better in June. He batted .414 with an 1139 OPS through 15 games. Then they realized, okay, this is the time to go with him. But I do think that it's cool that an organization is mindful of an experience that is unique and that a guy won't get to repeat again. Brendan Rodgers went up to Hartford last week. He's not getting named to the Eastern League All-Star team because of what he did in the California League. So the fact that these guys are mindful of the reality that Brendan Rodgers only has this time in his life and in his career one time. And if he's going to be selected by his peers and by the media and by the coaches in the California League to play in a game like that and to take part in those festivities, that's cool. And organizations like to, a lot of organizations, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of organizations like to nurture that. I know in talking with some Rockies player development people in spring training, that was one of the things that they really stressed for the World Baseball Classic. They had a minor league infielder named Scott Burcham who became kind of a hero of sorts in helping to lead Israel out of the first round in the WBC in Korea. That's an opportunity that a guy like Scott Burcham isn't going to get in many other contexts. That isn't a guy who's going to be selected for a USA Baseball national team to play in the WBC, but a unique experience. The Rockies told him to go for it. They were all on board with that. Jerry Weinstein, we had on the podcast, who's the manager of AA Hartford. He managed that Team Israel squad in the World Baseball Classic, and the organization was very supportive of that. So I think that's really cool along these lines with Brendan Rodgers as well. I think the conversation is definitely different if Rodgers was a college-produced position player and A.J. Puck was a high school-produced pitcher. Because in that context, I think you're looking for a much higher rate of progress. And somebody like Brendan Rodgers, if he came out of college back in 2015 and was just at the high A level in 2017 and really broke out quickly, he's going to be promoted a lot more quickly as well. And for A.J. Puck, if he's a younger guy, you want to see that he can sustain that over the long haul of a full season against some really good hitters. So there is a ton that goes into this. But I do think, like Sam said, on the A's side, they had seen enough. And you want to see somebody like A.J. Puck make those steps toward the upper minors a little bit more quickly because he's pitched at high-level baseball. He's pitched in huge games in his college career with Florida. Last year made some good strides right out of the draft. You want to see that road be shorter to Oakland than what you would see with a guy who's 19 or 20 years old at this spot. For Brendan Rodgers, that's a kid who's going to be going into the Eastern League at 20 years old and facing guys who are the most talented in their systems. So that's where you're really going to be tested. And I do like that philosophy a lot, that you don't want to see guys go in and just dominate. And I think that's the other risk that you run, is you don't want somebody like Brendan Rodgers to languish and do nothing but hit 400 or 500 for a span of a month and a half, because that's not doing anything to develop a player. If you got really good at Madden on PlayStation 4, you wouldn't play it on rookie level always. You would bump up the difficulty. That is sort of the same context, grossly simplified, for player development.
Yourself. Some of us like hitting 400.
I just don't. I think that's a huge point with finding that balance. Is you want a guy to have success. You want him to be playing the game in a manner that you see a lot of progress. You also don't want him just going out there dominating against lesser competition and not getting any better. And you only get better against better competition. So it's a tough line to toe, but Brendan Rodgers presumably will play in the Cal League All-Star game and be on a flight to Hartford the next morning.
Yeah, and one thing we should point out, too, is we've been using the example of high school and college, and obviously everybody's got different backgrounds, but I'll just go back to Torres, what we were talking about with him before. He only had 32 games of AA experience before he got bumped to AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre, and he didn't have any AA experience last year. I mean, this is not like he was building on something here. This was the Yankees just identifying that he was ready and going to move. I mean, there's other things involved. As much as we get caught up in stats, and everybody does to a point, because it's the clearest evidence we have of somebody either struggling or doing well. But they're getting reports every day. They know what the player is doing. They know when a hard hit ball is not being rewarded, and they know when they're not being challenged anymore, or they're taking plays off, or it can show up in the player himself. I just go back to the fact that it's going to vary by organization. Each one has its own strategy. I know the Yankees, when they brought up Torres, they were just saying, listen, he was ready for it. There's no point in him hanging around. If we see everything we need to see and we want to try some new stuff with him, that's when you make the move. I mean, each player is different. Each organization is different. But the idea of Puck and Rodgers, I think, crystallize it a little bit more so about that organizational differences than our usual examples.
So the moral is every organization does it differently, but it's also important to point out that there is no template. There's no boilerplate for these guys either, and what you think is going to work with one prospect isn't going to work with another necessarily also. So that's something to keep in mind, and something that's always fascinated me talking to player development people is how they seem to be so in tune with every player's individual needs, which I think is a big sea change in player development from probably what would have been a conversation 20 or 30 years ago in how do you expect guys to develop. Not that they assumed everybody was the same, but I think you more likely assumed everybody can pretty much generally follow the same track, and it's either going to work or it's not going to work. Nowadays, everything is so highly specialized and highly tailored to get every prospect to his threshold and to his ceiling that it works differently for everybody. It works differently in every organization. It works differently on the position player side and the pitcher side. Catchers work differently. It's so intricate for each and every prospect that what we see from Brendan Rodgers maybe isn't necessarily what we would see from somebody with Rancho Cucamonga who is doing the same thing in the Dodgers organization, or who over in the Carolina League is doing the same thing in the Texas Rangers organization with the Down East Wood Ducks, something like that. So that's always something to keep in mind as well. But those decisions they're difficult and they're tenuous, but they're exciting to watch from our perspective because we don't have to live with the struggles if guys go up to a higher level and they can't quite hack it yet. But it's fun to see guys like this making the climb.
Yeah, I'm more excited, I think, when I get surprised that somebody was bumped a little too early or even a little late, later than I was imagining, because that tells me something I don't know. And all these roster moves are kind of learning moments, not just for the player, not just for the organization, but also for us who follow them on a daily basis. How they handle the move and when the move came is something we can always learn about these guys and how they're viewed internally and how we should view them externally.
So keep an eye on your favorite players throughout your minor league organizations. If guys are crushing the ball right now, this is really the time of year to keep a closer eye on where players are and where they could be headed, because around the time that first half titles start to get wrapped up in the seasons that divide into two halves at the lower levels of the minor leagues, you won't see this at AAA, obviously, with division titles in the first and second half, etc., or in the AA Eastern League. But for leagues like the Cal League, the Carolina League, the Florida State League, the Texas League, Southern League, those types of circuits that have rosters that will be vastly different after their all-star breaks, that's the reason why. It's just a good stopping point for a guy's development if he seems ready for the next level. So watch that in your organization, because this is the time of year where things can see some massive changes headed over the next couple of weeks. With no Ben, we'll move on and we'll wrap things up. The Show Before the Show podcast, episode number 115, closing out next. Been a whole ton of Tyler and Sam this week. I apologize for my side of it. Sam has been great though.
I too apologize, just for the record. This feels like a Charlie Rose episode, like a conversation with Sam and Tyler about minor league baseball.
Episode, yeah.
Yeah, instead of like the minor league baseball podcast, this is just us talking.
This is really just like it's fresh air with Sam and Tyler.
Oh, and if it was fresh air, it would be much more hushed tone. And my questions would be like much more
insightful. Yeah.
We would, when we brought up your birthday earlier, Tyler, we would bring up what your birthday reminds you of when you were 6.
Now, one thing you said in your memoir, you remember what are you watching on MILB.TV this week? We've got short season leagues starting up all over the place. If you would like to subscribe to MILB.TV, you can still do so at MILB.TV or MILB.com. Sam, what are you watching?
Yeah, so anybody who is keeping track of the home run derbies this week, just because it is also All-Star Game week, there were a couple of home run derbies this week on Monday. The obvious highlight was Eloy Jimenez, Cubs talk prospect, pulling a Roy Hobbs and just hitting the lights out in left field in Salem, Virginia during the Carolina League All-Star Game. Was really cool to see. I mean, you just watch the contact. It wasn't like a normal home run derby. It was not, all right, throw, hit, let's watch it. It was literally just pitch, hitting. Like he was on to the next at bat by the time you saw lights falling from the sky, which was really neat. We got a video of it on the site check that out if you get a chance. So he's going to be back with Myrtle Beach this weekend after the All-Star break. They're playing Down East this weekend let me check how many games they're playing against the Down East Wood Ducks. It seems like a bunch. So they're pretty much through Sunday. They will be playing against Myrtle Beach. All of those games on MILB.tv. Eloy Jimenez's at-bats are pretty much must-watch stuff already. But after that home run, if he can turn that into a game, that would be awesome. So don't miss your chance to see him potentially turn the lights out against Down East this weekend.
Turn the lights out. I see what you did there. I'm going to go to the Pacific Coast League, and actually a couple of different teams that have guys at the plate who have been way fun to watch in recent weeks. Ahmed Rosario and Dom Smith with the Las Vegas 51s. Dominic Smith, friend of the podcast, has batted .318, .370, .463 this season in 71 games for AAA Las Vegas. He is 22 years old, and Dominic Smith is really good. Ahmed Rosario has been even better, and he's 21 in 69 games this year. A nice slash line of .325, .368, .479, also 7 homers for him. Las Vegas will be home this weekend, taking on the Salt Lake Bees, a AAA affiliate of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. The Fresno Grizzlies, it's like every night we look at Fresno, somebody is just going off and doing something insane. Tony Kemp on that team now has, I believe, 5 straight multi-hit games and a hitting streak that reached 10 as of Monday night. Again, we're recording on Tuesday. Colin Moran has gone off for that team as of recent weeks. Moran, the 2013 first-round pick by the Miami Marlins out of North Carolina. This season, a slash line of .281, .343, .535, but now 15 homers. And in May and June, he has just crushed the baseball all over the place. Already 7 home runs in June through just 16 games. He's driven in 19 runs. 18 of those have come over his last 9 games at the plate, and Fresno will host Sacramento this weekend for kind of a strangely structured Thursday, Friday, Saturday series with a Saturday doubleheader and then an off-day Sunday. But you can catch those games at MILB.tv as well. Charlie Rose episode wrapping up.
Does Charlie Rose have like a signature sign-off? I don't think so.
I don't know. I guess I don't watch enough Charlie Rose.
I know, we're learning enough to make a Charlie Rose reference, but not complete the circle.
Anybody who's like in college or younger listening to this podcast is like, Charlie Rose? What are these two nerds talking about?
Or
educate
there's
yourselves.
one really educated 17-year-old
yes.
who's a PBS fan.
Yes, Charlie Rose.
She's yelling, "You idiots!"
He's Sam Dykstra. I'm Tyler Mond. A whole host of minor league all-star games this week that will be coming down from next week, and we'll break down. We'll give you our returns on some all-star game performances and what to look forward to in the second half beyond what we already have. Big thanks to Josh Jackson and his work in the California League with the Cal League All-Star Game, Brendan Rodgers, Bud Jeter, and all the rest of them. And until next week, we'll talk to you then. He's Sam Dykstra. I'm Tyler Mond. Enjoy the all-star games. Talk to you next week.